So today I want to talk about what we call populus in geomancy. Populus in geomancy. This is what we call populus in geomancy, which of course is what we all know. But these figures is not always populus. Especially in Western geomancy, we all know it as populus, and there's no other name for it. What as other than what populus. Even in Eastern geomancy, it is also called it is called Jammah. Aha. So, and there's no other names we call it other than what Jammah. In Western geomancy, it is called what Populus, while in Eastern geomancy it's called Jammah. So in Western geomancy, there is no other name for it apart from what Populus. While in Eastern geomancy, there is no other name for it apart from what Jammah. But in Ifa tradition, there's another name for this particular figure. There's another name for it. You have two different, at least minimum of two names, different name for this. Aha. So which means that what this figure is actually more than what 16. Geometry figure is actually more than 16. But because what we use is what the 16 figure. That's why we call it what geometry figure is what 16. And I will tell you, I'm going to explain it in this particular video. You see, this particular figure is called Eji Ogbe in Ifa tradition. This particular figure is called Eji Ogbe in Ifa tradition. Also, there's another name for it as well. It is called what Oyeku. This figure is also called Oyeku. The same way they write Oyeku is the same way they write what Eji Ogbe. But even though it is written the same way, but it is different. Even in Eastern geometry, it is different. But Eastern geometry doesn't just have different name for it. It is one name. But in the Ifa tradition, it has two different names. And having two different names means that it is more than 16. But all of them are embedded in this word. The rest of other figures that are not mentioned are embedded in this word 16 figure. In this Eji Ogbe. That is one of the literal interpretation of why there's different name for it. But now the question now is that if I said there's a different having different name implies that if I said having different names imply two different figures, isn't it? Then how does it apply in geomancy? How can we identify which one is Eji Ogbe, which one is what Oyeku in geomancy? It's the same way it is being written, but it has different name when it appears in different houses. Let me give an example to make this more clear so that you understand, even though there is no Eastern name for it, but there is other name for it in Eastern geomancy, but you have to make the explanation long for you to understand this other name for it. But let me first of all explain from the perspective of Ifa perspective. That is how to explain that from perspective of Ifa. Now this figure here is called this figure in Ifa, I said it's called Eji Ogbe and it's also called Oyeku. Let me now tell you, this same figure is Oyeku, but how do you then know when should we call this one Oyeku and when should we call this one Eji Ogbe? How do we know in geomancy? That is, that word, that figure in Ifa that is being called Oyeku, that is also being called Eji Ogbe. How do we know if we should call it Oyeku in geomancy or if we should call it Eji Ogbe in geomancy? Now, here is it. People who understand Eastern geometry very well, they may possibly understand this more than people who understand Western geometry. I repeat, what I'm about to explain here now, people who understand Eastern geometry very well, we possibly understand what I'm about to explain more than people who understand Western geometry. And I'm going to explain the explanation here. Excuse me. Now, this figure is called Oyeku. Oyeku, this figure, this Jammah figure, is called Oyeku. If it is found between house 1 to house 8, it's called Oyeku. If it is found from this house 1 to this house 8, if it is found within here, it is called Oyeku. And I will explain why it is called Oyeku, but let me explain further. But I'm coming back to explain why it is called Oyeku. Now, if it is found in any other places apart from house 1 to house 8, it's called Eji Ogbe. That is, if it is found between house 9 to house 16, it is called Eji Ogbe. If it is found between house 1 to house 9, it is called Oyeku. If it is found between house 9 to house 16, it is called what? Eji Ogbe. Now, why is it called Eji Ogbe here? Why is it called Oyeku here? Now, this figure here, Jammah here, this Jammah in house 1 to house whatever you find it. Especially it is more called Oyeku if it is found between house 1 to house 4, but it is extended to house 8 as well. But it's more powerful to be called Oyeku when it's found between house 1 to house 4. You understand? But if it is found within house 1 to house 8, it can also be called Oyeku. Now, why is it called Oyeku? Because it is called Oyeku here because it is not two figures that comes together to form Jammah. The figure you are finding here, it was not birth. It was not given birth. It doesn't come by any other figure. It comes by itself based on what you divine, what you casted, what you seek, the answer you are seeking. That's why. But if you find between this mother figure, when you find between this niece figure and this down figure here, it's called Eji Ogbe because it is two figure that was added together to bring about it. Like now we found it here in house 9. You understand? And this one is Eji Ogbe. Why when it is here it is called what? Oyeku. It is called Eji Ogbe because two figure comes together to give us what? This figure. That's why it's called Eji Ogbe. Do you understand? Ejo, it is two figures that form it. And when it comes to geomancy interpretation, especially people understand Eastern geomancy, they will let you understand that this Jammah you are seeing here, it is neutral figure. It depends if it is positive. You cannot call Jammah, maybe it is good or bad. Depend on the two figure that brings about it. If two positive figure bring about Jammah, that means it's positive. If two negative figure from that, do you understand that? So that is why this one is called Eji Ogbe. This one is not Jammah. You won't interpret this figure the way you will interpret this particular figure. They are two different figures. They all just appear the same way. Do you understand that? So in order to cut all the story of having multiple different many figure, that is why all other figure that is not shown here are embedded in this Jammah or Oyeku figure. The geomancy figure is actually more than 16, but it is limited and accepted, granted, and submerged to be 16 figure. So if there is any other figure that is not found, that is needed, that is not found, Jammah will answer it. If Jammah could not answer it, then Eji Ogbe will answer it. Do you understand? So geomancy is actually deep. I hope somebody understands this, that there is difference between Eji Ogbe and there is difference between Oyeku, but they are written the same way. But when it comes to geomancy, we can identify Oyeku and we identify Eji Ogbe. So Oyeku can be found when it is within house 1 to house 8 is Oyeku. When it's between house 9 to house 16 is Eji Ogbe. Now, how do we then identify it in Ifa tradition? Let me show you how it can. If you want to write Eji Ogbe, let me tell you how to write Eji Ogbe. Let me start with how to write Oyeku. If you want to write Oyeku, let's say maybe you want to do some spiritual something and you need to write Oyeku or Eji Ogbe. It is not the same way you write it. So if you want to write Eji Ogbe, this is how to write Eji Ogbe. This is how to write Oyeku rather, not Eji Ogbe. This is how to write Oyeku. This is how to write Oyeku. If you want to write Oyeku figure, this is how to write Oyeku. But if you want to write Eji Ogbe, you will write it. Let me write this here. If you want to write Eji Ogbe, this is how to write Eji Ogbe. Can you see? This is Eji Ogbe. This is Eji Ogbe. What is different between this and the first one? It is when you see this figure now, you cannot tell if it is Eji Ogbe or Oyeku until you ask the person that casted it, the person that write it, that can tell what figure is written here. Because the difference between Eji Ogbe and Oyeku is how it is written. The difference between Eji Ogbe and Oyeku in Ifa tradition, it is how that Eji Ogbe is written. But the difference between Eji Ogbe and Oyeku in geomancy tradition, it is where that figure is found. Now, the difference between Eji Ogbe and Oyeku in Ifa tradition. Look at it. When I wanted to write Eji Ogbe, when I wanted to write Oyeku, this is Oyeku. I write them at the same time. Can you see? But when I wanted to write Eji Ogbe, I started by doing this first, doing this way, doing this first, and doing this way. Sometimes when you want to do some spiritual something, that will ask you to write the figure you want to put on it. How you write it, especially this particular figure, how you write it determine the kind of answer, the result you will get. So I hope you are able to learn one or two things in this video. So I talked about Eji Ogbe and Oyeku, how to differentiate them and how to identify them. I also talked about how to write them. I also talked about how to differentiate it in geomancy and how to differentiate it in Ifa tradition. So I hope you learn one or two things. And thank you for watching the video. May God bless you miraculously.